Hello, I am Isabella Montgomery. 2 weeks ago, I discovered my sister wearing my grandmother's emerald wedding ring to her engagement party while telling everyone it was a family heirloom passed down to her. When I confronted her privately, she laughed and said our grandmother always loved her more anyway. That night, my husband, who happens to be a CIA director, pulled me aside and showed me classified surveillance footage that revealed the truth about my family that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my place in the Montgomery legacy. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The engagement party took place at the historic Belmont Estate in Virginia, a sprawling mansion that had been in our family for 4 generations. The venue itself represented everything that the Montgomery name had come to symbolize in Washington society: old money, political influence, and the kind of understated elegance that spoke to generations of accumulated power and prestige. I arrived at the party with my husband, Director James Crawford, expecting to celebrate my younger sister Vivian's engagement to Senator William Hayes, a rising star in the Republican Party whose political ambitions perfectly complemented Vivian's social aspirations. The match had been orchestrated by our mother, Margaret Montgomery, whose talent for strategic relationship building had elevated our family's status within the intricate network of Washington's political elite. The evening began exactly as these events always did in the Montgomery family tradition. Guests gathered in the grand ballroom, where crystal chandeliers cast warm light over conversations that moved seamlessly between social pleasantries and political strategy. The guest list represented a carefully curated collection of senators, ambassadors, federal judges, and the kind of influential private citizens whose wealth and connections shaped policy decisions behind closed doors. I had attended dozens of similar gatherings throughout my life, moving through these social environments with the practiced ease that comes from childhood exposure to high-stakes networking and diplomatic protocol. My role in these settings had always been well-defined. I was the responsible older daughter, the one who had married well and maintained the family's reputation while supporting my husband's demanding career in intelligence services. James commanded respect in these circles not only because of his position as CIA director, but because of his reputation for principled leadership and strategic thinking that had earned him bipartisan support in an increasingly polarized political environment. His presence at family events lent additional credibility to the Montgomery name, while providing access to information and influence that few families could claim. The dynamic between Vivian and myself had been established early in our childhood and had remained remarkably consistent over the years. She was the charming one, the daughter who could work a room with effortless grace and make powerful men feel both important and protective. I was the dutiful one, the daughter who excelled academically, married strategically, and maintained the behind-the-scenes relationships that supported the family's continued social and political relevance. This division of roles had never bothered me significantly, because it seemed to reflect our natural strengths and interests. Vivian thrived on attention and social performance, while I preferred the more substantive aspects of relationship building and strategic planning. Our mother had encouraged this specialization, suggesting that it allowed both daughters to contribute meaningfully to the family's objectives, while avoiding direct competition that might create tension. The engagement announcement itself was delivered by Senator Hayes with the kind of polished presentation that reflected his experience in public speaking and media management. He spoke eloquently about his admiration for Vivian's intelligence and grace, while also acknowledging the honor of joining a family with such distinguished service to the nation. The speech struck exactly the right balance between personal sentiment and political positioning. As the senator concluded his remarks and raised his glass in a toast, I noticed something that made my heart stop completely. The ring on Vivian's finger was not the modest diamond that I had expected for a young couple building their careers, but rather an emerald surrounded by diamonds in an antique setting that I recognized immediately and completely. The ring had belonged to our grandmother, Eleanor Montgomery, a remarkable woman who had built the foundation of our family's political influence through her own strategic marriages and philanthropic activities during the mid-20th century. Grandmother Eleanor had been the acknowledged matriarch of the Montgomery family until her death 3 years earlier, and her jewelry collection represented both significant financial value and deep emotional significance for those who understood its history. The emerald ring had particular meaning because it had been Grandmother Eleanor's engagement ring from her marriage to our grandfather, Ambassador Theodore Montgomery, whose diplomatic career had established many of the international relationships that continued to benefit our family's business and political interests. The ring represented not just monetary value, but the symbolic foundation of the Montgomery legacy in Washington society. I had always understood that this ring would eventually come to me as the older daughter, particularly since I had been the one who spent the most time with Grandmother Eleanor during her final years. We had shared long conversations about family history, political strategy, and the responsibilities that came with the Montgomery name and reputation. During those conversations, Grandmother Eleanor had often spoken about the importance of maintaining family unity, while also ensuring that family assets and responsibilities were distributed according to merit rather than mere birth order. She had emphasized that leadership within the Montgomery family should be earned through demonstrated competence and commitment to the family's values and objectives. The shock of seeing that ring on Vivian's finger was so profound that I struggled to maintain my composure during the remainder of the engagement celebration. I moved through the evening's social obligations mechanically, accepting congratulations and making appropriate responses, while my mind raced to understand how this transfer of such a significant family heirloom could have occurred without my knowledge or involvement. The evening concluded with the traditional photographs and final toasts, during which I was required to smile and pose as the supportive older sister, while my emotions churned with confusion, hurt, and a growing sense that something fundamental about my understanding of family dynamics was incomplete or incorrect. After the guests departed and the formal obligations were fulfilled, I approached Vivian privately in the mansion's library, a room where we had often retreated as children to discuss family matters away from parental supervision. The setting felt appropriate for a conversation that might require honesty and emotional vulnerability. "Vivian," I began carefully, "I could not help but notice Grandmother's emerald ring tonight. It is absolutely beautiful, and I was surprised to see it." Her response revealed an attitude that I had not previously recognized, though in retrospect it had probably been developing for years beneath the surface of our supposedly harmonious sisterly relationship. "Oh, this old thing," she said with a dismissive laugh that seemed calculated to minimize both the ring's significance and my emotional reaction to seeing it. "Grandmother always intended for me to have it. She told me several times that it would look better on someone who actually knew how to wear jewelry properly." The casual cruelty of her comment was delivered with such confidence that it momentarily left me speechless. The implication that I lacked the sophistication to properly appreciate or display such a significant piece of family history was both personally hurtful and factually inconsistent with my understanding of Grandmother Eleanor's expressed preferences and intentions. "I am confused," I replied, attempting to maintain diplomatic composure despite my growing distress. I had always understood that Grandmother intended for me to inherit her engagement ring, particularly since we discussed it several times during her final illness. Vivian's expression shifted to something approaching pity, as if my confusion was evidence of a fundamental misunderstanding about my place in the family hierarchy that she found both obvious and somewhat embarrassing. "Isabella, you have always been so literal about these things," she said with a tone that suggested patient explanation of simple concepts to someone with limited understanding. Grandmother knew that I would marry someone important, someone who could properly appreciate the political significance of the Montgomery legacy. She wanted her ring to continue representing our family's influence in the most visible and effective way possible. Her words contained layers of implication that went far beyond the immediate question of jewelry inheritance. She was suggesting that my marriage to James, despite his prominent position and personal accomplishments, was somehow less politically valuable than her engagement to Senator Hayes. She was also implying that Grandmother Eleanor had made calculated decisions about family assets based on assessments of our respective contributions to the family's continued prominence. The conversation continued for several more minutes, but Vivian's position remained consistent. She had been specifically chosen by Grandmother Eleanor to inherit the ring because she was better positioned to honor its legacy and continue the Montgomery family's tradition of influential marriages and strategic relationship building. As I drove home with James later that evening, the weight of the conversation and its implications created a silence between us that was both uncomfortable and revealing. My husband possessed the kind of analytical intelligence that came from years of evaluating complex situations and identifying patterns that others might miss, and I could sense that he was processing the evening's events with the same systematic approach he brought to national security challenges. "That was an interesting development with the ring," he said finally, his tone carefully neutral in the way that often preceded more significant observations. "Vivian claims that grandmother always intended for her to have it," I replied, hearing the uncertainty in my own voice as I spoke the words. James was quiet for several more minutes as we navigated the familiar streets toward our home in Georgetown, a neighborhood that reflected our combined professional status while providing the security and privacy that his position required. "Isabella," he said eventually, "there are some things about your family's recent activities that we should discuss when we have more privacy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us." Now back to the story. His words carried the weight of professional knowledge and personal concern that immediately captured my complete attention. As CIA director, James had access to information and analytical resources that provided perspectives on individuals and organizations that were not available to private citizens, even those with significant political connections. The remainder of our drive home was conducted in silence, but it was the silence of preparation rather than conclusion. I understood that the evening's revelations about the ring represented only the beginning of a much larger conversation about my family, my position within it, and the possibility that my understanding of both had been shaped by information that was incomplete or deliberately misleading. The Montgomery family had built its influence through careful management of information, strategic relationship building, and the kind of long-term planning that required sophisticated understanding of political and social dynamics. The possibility that these same techniques had been used to manage my own perceptions and expectations was both professionally impressive and personally devastating. As we arrived at our home and prepared to continue the conversation in private, I realized that the evening had marked a turning point in my understanding of my own life and relationships. The emerald ring was not simply a piece of jewelry or even a family heirloom, but rather a symbol of power, recognition, and belonging that I had assumed would eventually be mine. The discovery that this assumption was incorrect, combined with James's suggestion that there were additional information I needed to understand, created the foundation for what would become a complete reevaluation of everything I thought I knew about my family, my marriage, and my own identity within the complex network of relationships that shaped life in Washington's political elite. The motivational implications of this moment were not yet clear to me, but I was beginning to understand that true empowerment might require abandoning comfortable assumptions about family loyalty and personal worth, in favor of a more honest assessment of the dynamics that had shaped my entire adult life. The journey toward that understanding would prove to be more challenging and more transformative than I could have imagined as I unlocked the door to our Georgetown home and prepared to hear what my husband had discovered about the Montgomery family legacy. The Georgetown townhouse that James and I called home represented more than a residence. It served as a carefully chosen reflection of our combined professional status and personal values within the intricate social ecosystem of Washington's political elite. The federal-style architecture, the historically significant address, and the proximity to other influential families had all been factors in our decision to purchase the property 5 years earlier, when James first assumed his position at the Central Intelligence Agency. As we entered the house that night, the familiar surroundings felt different somehow, as if the evening's revelations had altered the very atmosphere of our private space. The formal living room, with its carefully selected antiques and diplomatic gifts from foreign intelligence services, suddenly seemed like a stage set designed to project an image, rather than a genuine reflection of our authentic selves. James moved with the purposeful efficiency that characterized his approach to both professional and personal challenges. He activated the security systems that protected our communications from electronic surveillance, drew the heavy curtains that ensured visual privacy, and poured 2 glasses of the single malt scotch that we reserve for conversations requiring complete honesty and emotional preparation. The ritual of creating secure space for sensitive discussion was one that we had developed over years of marriage, to someone whose work involved national security implications. Even discussions of family matters sometimes intersected with professional considerations. particularly when family relationships involved prominent political figures whose activities might be relevant to intelligence assessments. Isabella, James began, settling into the leather chair that faced mine across the mahogany coffee table that had been a wedding gift from the British Intelligence Service. The situation with your sister and the ring represents only the visible portion of a much larger pattern that has been developing for several years. His tone carried the measured cadence that I had learned to associate with briefings that would challenge my fundamental assumptions about people and situations. I thought I understood completely. The analytical framework that made him effective in evaluating foreign threats was now being applied to my own family dynamics, and the implications of that application were both reassuring and deeply unsettling. I need you to understand that what I am about to share with you comes from multiple intelligence sources, including financial surveillance, communication intercepts, and behavioral analysis that has been conducted as part of broader security assessments of individuals with access to classified information through their proximity to senior government officials. The formal language was his way of establishing that this conversation would move beyond personal speculation into the realm of documented fact and professional analysis. The Montgomery family's activities had apparently been significant enough to warrant the attention of intelligence services, though I could not yet understand why or what they had discovered. James opened a leather portfolio that contained documents I had never seen before, materials that bore the classification markings and security controls that indicated their origin within the intelligence community. The existence of such documentation about my family represented a level of scrutiny that I had never suspected, and had certainly never authorized or anticipated. Your mother has been conducting financial transactions over the past 18 months that indicate coordination with foreign business interests, that maintain relationships with intelligence services hostile to the United States, he said, his voice maintaining the professional neutrality that helped me process information that might otherwise have been emotionally overwhelming. The words seemed to hang in the air between us, requiring time for my mind to accept their meaning and implications. My mother, Margaret Montgomery, the woman who had dedicated her life to building and maintaining our family's reputation within American political society, was apparently involved in activities that potentially compromised national security interests. The financial records indicate payments received from shell companies that ultimately trace back to Russian oligarchs who are currently under federal investigation for money laundering and political influence operations targeting American electoral processes. James continued, consulting documents that detailed transactions and connections spanning multiple countries and legal jurisdictions. The systematic nature of the evidence he presented made it impossible to dismiss the allegations as misunderstandings or coincidences. The documentation included bank records, communication intercepts, travel logs, and photographic surveillance that painted a comprehensive picture of activities that had been carefully hidden from family members who might have questioned their appropriateness or legality. Your sister Vivian has been serving as an intermediary for these transactions, using her social connections and upcoming marriage to Senator Hayes as cover for meetings and communications that would otherwise attract suspicion from law enforcement agencies monitoring foreign influence operations. The revelation about Vivian's involvement transformed my understanding of her recent behavior and social activities. The parties, the networking events, the strategic relationship building that I had interpreted as normal political socializing had apparently been serving as camouflage for activities with far more serious implications than advancing her personal ambitions or supporting the family's political influence. James showed me photographs taken at various social gatherings over the previous 6 months, images that documented Vivian's interactions with individuals whose names appeared on federal watch lists for suspected intelligence activities. The photographic evidence revealed patterns of behavior that had been invisible to me despite my presence at many of the same events. The emerald ring represents more than family sentiment or inheritance priorities, he explained, pointing to financial records that detailed a complex sequence of transactions involving jewelry appraisals, insurance valuations, and international shipping costs that suggested the ring had been used as collateral or payment for services that were not reflected in any official business documentation. The systematic destruction of my assumptions about family loyalty and straightforward inheritance disputes was occurring with such methodical precision that I found myself unable to formulate immediate emotional responses. The evidence demanded intellectual processing before emotional reaction, though I could feel the weight of betrayal building in my chest as the full scope of the deception became clear. The marriage to Senator Hayes is not primarily about personal compatibility or political ambition, James continued. It represents the culmination of a multi-year operation designed to place assets within the inner circles of American foreign policy decision-making, providing access to information and influence opportunities that could serve hostile foreign interests. The implications for Senator Hayes himself were staggering, though James indicated that preliminary investigations suggested the senator was an unwitting participant rather than a willing collaborator in whatever scheme had been developed around his relationship with Vivian. The man I had met that evening, who had seemed genuinely devoted to my sister and excited about their future together, was apparently being manipulated in ways that he could not recognize or defend against. Your position within the family structure has been carefully managed to ensure that you remained unaware of these activities, while also ensuring that your marriage to me provided additional credibility and access for family members whose activities might otherwise have attracted scrutiny from security services. This revelation struck at the core of my understanding of my own identity and relationships. The marriage that I had believed was based on mutual affection and shared values had apparently been viewed by my family as a strategic asset that enhanced their capacity to conduct activities that required protection from official attention. The realization that my role in family dynamics had been manipulated for purposes I had never understood created a profound sense of isolation and betrayal that went beyond mere disappointment about inheritance disputes or sibling rivalry. The fundamental relationships that had shaped my adult identity were apparently based on calculated deception, rather than genuine affection or respect for my individual worth and contributions. James reached across the coffee table and took my hand, the first gesture of personal comfort he had offered during what had been a thoroughly professional briefing about national security implications and criminal activities. His touch reminded me that whatever my family's motivations and activities might be, my marriage represented something authentic and valuable that existed independently of their schemes and manipulations. Isabella, you need to understand that none of this reflects on your character or judgment, he said, his voice shifting from professional neutrality to personal reassurance. You have been the target of sophisticated manipulation by people who have been planning these activities for years. The fact that you were unaware of their true nature demonstrates their skill, not your naivety or lack of intelligence. The professional validation was important for my ability to process the information without completely losing confidence in my own perceptions and decision-making capabilities. The acknowledgement that I had been deliberately deceived by experts rather than simply failing to notice obvious warning signs helped me maintain some sense of personal competence, despite the devastating nature of the revelations. The question now is how you want to respond to this information, James continued. You have several options, each with different implications for your family relationships, your personal safety, and your future role in whatever resolution emerges from ongoing federal investigations. The transition from passive recipient of shocking information to active decision-maker about future actions represented the beginning of what would become a fundamental transformation in my understanding of my own agency and power within complex family and political dynamics. The woman who had entered the house that evening, devastated by her sister's theft of a family ring, was being invited to become someone who could influence the outcome of a situation with national security implications. My professional recommendation is that you maintain normal family interactions while providing information about their activities to federal investigators who are working to understand the full scope of the foreign influence operation, James said. However, the personal decision about how to handle relationships with your mother and sister must be made based on your own values and objectives, rather than strategic considerations. The opportunity to contribute meaningfully to resolving a situation that threatened both national security and my own family's future represented a form of empowerment that I had never previously experienced. Instead of being a passive victim of family manipulation or inheritance disputes, I could become an active participant in ensuring that justice was served and that the truth about my family's activities was revealed to appropriate authorities. The next several hours were spent reviewing additional documentation and discussing the practical implications of different courses of action. James provided detailed explanations of federal investigation procedures, witness protection protocols, and the likely timeline for legal proceedings that would ultimately determine the consequences of my family's activities. As dawn approached, I found myself experiencing a clarity of purpose that had been absent from my life for years. The shock and betrayal that had dominated my emotional response to the evening's revelations were gradually being replaced by determination to ensure that my family's actions would not succeed in compromising either national security or the integrity of democratic institutions that my husband had dedicated his career to protecting. The emerald ring that had sparked the initial confrontation with Vivian now represented something far more significant than inheritance or family sentiment. It had become a symbol of the systematic deception and manipulation that had shaped my entire understanding of family relationships and personal worth. The ring was evidence of criminal activity rather than a treasured heirloom, and its recovery would serve justice rather than merely satisfying personal emotional needs. The transformation from confused victim to informed participant in a federal investigation represented the beginning of a journey toward authentic empowerment and self-determination that would ultimately prove more valuable than any inheritance or family recognition. The woman who had felt diminished by her sister's casual cruelty about jewelry and family favoritism was discovering reserves of strength and purpose that had been suppressed by years of accommodation to family expectations and social obligations. The motivational foundation of this transformation lay in the recognition that personal worth and family value could not be measured by inherited objects or assigned roles within dysfunctional family systems. True empowerment required the courage to confront difficult truths about the people closest to us and the willingness to choose justice over comfort when family loyalty conflicts with ethical obligations to broader society. As I prepared for what would become the most challenging period of my adult life, I understood that the journey ahead would require every skill I had developed through years of navigating complex social and political environments. The difference would be that I would now be acting on behalf of my own values and objectives rather than serving family interests that had been concealed from me and that conflicted with everything I believed about integrity and national service. The morning after my world fundamentally changed arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that follows major storms. Sunlight streamed through the windows of our Georgetown townhouse, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air like microscopic evidence of the upheaval that had occurred during the previous evening's revelations. I found myself sitting at the mahogany breakfast table that had witnessed countless discussions of policy matters and professional challenges, but never anything approaching the magnitude of personal transformation that now demanded my complete attention. James had departed early for his office at the Central Intelligence Agency, carrying with him the weight of professional obligations that could not be postponed despite the personal crisis that had emerged within our household. Before leaving, he had provided me with secure communication protocols and the contact information for federal agents who specialized in investigating foreign influence operations, individuals whose expertise would prove essential for navigating the complex legal and security implications of my family's activities. The documentation that remained spread across our dining room table represented more than evidence of criminal behavior. These files contained the systematic destruction of every assumption I had maintained about my identity, my relationships, and my place within the intricate network of obligations and loyalties that had shaped my adult existence. The financial records, surveillance photographs, and communication intercepts painted a comprehensive picture of deception that extended far beyond simple inheritance disputes or sibling rivalry. As I reviewed the materials with the methodical approach that my education and professional background had taught me to apply to complex problems, I began to recognize patterns that should have been obvious years earlier, if I had possessed the framework for understanding what I was observing. The foreign travel that my mother had described as cultural enrichment and business development had actually been meetings with individuals whose names appeared on federal watch lists for suspected intelligence activities. The expensive gifts that had appeared in our family home over the past 2 years, items that my mother had attributed to successful investments and prudent financial management, were actually payments for services that were not reflected in any legitimate business documentation. The antique jewelry, the rare books, the original artwork that had enhanced our family's reputation for sophisticated taste were revealed as components of a money laundering operation that converted foreign payments into assets that could be displayed publicly without attracting suspicious attention. The revelation that Vivian's social activities had been serving as cover for intelligence operations transformed my understanding of every family gathering, charity event, and political reception that we had attended together over the previous 18 months. The conversations that I had interpreted as normal networking and relationship building had actually been carefully orchestrated encounters designed to gather information and establish influence relationships that could serve hostile foreign interests. The systematic nature of the deception was both professionally impressive and personally devastating. My family had demonstrated the kind of operational security and long-term planning that characterized sophisticated intelligence operations, while simultaneously maintaining the surface appearance of conventional political socializing and family advancement. The skill required to execute such a complex deception over an extended period indicated levels of training and coordination that extended far beyond amateur criminal activity. The most profound psychological challenge was recognizing that my own marriage had been viewed by my family as a strategic asset, rather than a personal relationship worthy of respect and protection. The woman who had believed that her family took pride in her successful marriage to a distinguished public servant was discovering that they had actually been calculating how to exploit that relationship for purposes that directly threatened the national security interests my husband had dedicated his career to protecting. The emotional weight of this betrayal extended beyond simple disappointment or hurt feelings. The discovery that my fundamental understanding of family dynamics had been manipulated for criminal purposes created a sense of psychological displacement that challenged my confidence in my ability to accurately assess people and situations. If I had been so completely deceived by the individuals who were closest to me, how could I trust my judgment about anyone or anything else? The process of questioning every interaction and assumption from the previous several years was simultaneously necessary and exhausting. Each memory required re-examination through the lens of new information that revealed hidden motivations and concealed objectives. The casual comments that had seemed like normal family communication were now recognizable as attempts to gather information about James's professional activities and travel schedule. The invitations to social events that had appeared to reflect family inclusion were actually opportunities to provide my family with access to individuals and information that could serve their operational objectives. The transformation from passive victim to informed participant in a federal investigation required more than simply accepting the reality of my family's criminal activities. It demanded the development of new skills and perspectives that would enable me to contribute meaningfully to exposing the full scope of their operations while protecting my own security and maintaining the cover necessary for gathering additional evidence. The first practical step involved establishing communication with Special Agent Sarah Martinez of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the lead investigator responsible for the foreign influence operation that had apparently been centered around my family's activities. Agent Martinez possessed extensive experience in counterintelligence operations and had been monitoring various aspects of the scheme for several months before the connection to my family became apparent through financial surveillance and communication intercepts. The initial meeting with Agent Martinez took place in a secure conference room at the J. Edgar Hoover Building, the FBI headquarters that represented the institutional commitment to protecting American democratic institutions from foreign manipulation and domestic criminal activity. The setting reinforced the seriousness of the situation, while also providing reassurance that my decision to cooperate with federal authorities was supported by the full resources of professional law enforcement agencies. Agent Martinez presented additional evidence that expanded my understanding of the scope and sophistication of the operation that had been developed around my family's social and political connections. The investigation had identified similar influence networks operating in multiple cities, suggesting that the activities centered around my mother and sister represented components of a larger coordinated effort to penetrate American foreign policy decision-making processes. The revelation that my family's activities were part of a broader pattern of foreign influence operations provided context that helped me understand why such extensive resources had been devoted to monitoring their behavior and documenting their connections. The threat to national security extended far beyond the specific actions of Margaret and Vivian Montgomery, encompassing systematic efforts to compromise the integrity of American democratic institutions through the cultivation of assets within political and social networks. The briefing materials provided by Agent Martinez included intelligence assessments that detailed the methods and objectives of foreign adversaries who had been developing influence operations targeting American political processes. The sophisticated nature of these efforts required equally sophisticated responses from federal agencies, including the development of comprehensive understanding of how influence networks operated and how they could be disrupted without compromising ongoing investigations. My role in the investigation would involve maintaining normal family relationships while providing real-time information about their activities, communications, and plans. The assignment required acting skills that I had never needed to develop, since I would need to conceal my knowledge of their criminal behavior while appearing to support their objectives and maintain family loyalty. The psychological challenge of this assignment extended beyond simple deception. I would need to interact with my mother and sister, while knowing that their expressions of affection and family concern were calculated manipulations designed to maintain my usefulness as an unwitting asset in their intelligence operations. The emotional discipline required to sustain such interactions without revealing my true knowledge and intentions would test every aspect of my character and determination. The practical preparation for this assignment involved detailed instruction in surveillance detection, secure communication protocols, and evidence-gathering techniques that would enable me to document my family's activities without alerting them to the investigation. The training provided by federal agents drew upon decades of experience in counterintelligence operations, though few agents had faced the personal challenges that came from investigating members of their own families. The most valuable insight provided during this preparation period was the recognition that my family's manipulation of my emotions and perceptions had actually been preparing me for the kind of disciplined emotional control that would now be required for successfully gathering intelligence about their operations. The years of accommodating their expectations and managing my reactions to their subtle psychological manipulations had developed capabilities that could now be applied to serving justice, rather than enabling criminal activity. The development of this new perspective on my own capabilities represented the beginning of a fundamental transformation in my understanding of personal empowerment and agency. Instead of viewing myself as a victim of sophisticated manipulation, I was learning to recognize the strength and resilience that had enabled me to survive and function effectively, despite years of systematic deception by people who should have been protecting and supporting my authentic development. The decision to commit fully to the federal investigation represented more than cooperation with law enforcement agencies. It embodied a choice to prioritize truth and justice over family loyalty when those values came into direct conflict. The woman who had been devastated by her sister's theft of a family ring was evolving into someone who could make difficult decisions based on principle rather than emotion. Someone who could act strategically in service of objectives that extended beyond personal interests or family obligations. The motivational foundation of this transformation lay in the recognition that authentic empowerment required the courage to confront uncomfortable truths about the people and systems that had shaped my identity. The process of questioning fundamental assumptions about family, loyalty, and personal worth was creating space for the development of values and objectives that reflected my own ethical commitments rather than the expectations and manipulations of others. The weeks that followed would test every aspect of this new understanding as I learned to navigate the complex demands of maintaining family relationships while serving the broader interests of national security and legal justice. The challenge would require sustained performance of a role that contradicted my natural inclinations toward honesty and transparency, while simultaneously developing the analytical skills necessary to recognize and document evidence that could contribute to exposing a sophisticated criminal operation. The emerald ring that had initiated this journey of discovery was now revealed as a symbol of everything that was false and manipulative about my family's treatment of relationships and obligations. The recovery of that ring would represent more than the return of stolen property. It would symbolize the triumph of truth over deception, justice over manipulation, and authentic personal empowerment over the comfortable illusions that had prevented me from recognizing my own strength and potential. The foundation of my previous understanding of family dynamics had developed the first significant crack, creating an opening through which new possibilities for personal growth and meaningful contribution could begin to emerge. The journey toward authentic empowerment had begun with the recognition that comfortable assumptions about family loyalty and personal worth might need to be abandoned in favor of more challenging but ultimately more rewarding commitments to truth and justice. The transformation from shocked family member to active intelligence asset required systematic development of capabilities that extended far beyond my previous experience in diplomatic social environments. Special Agent Martinez had emphasized that successful counterintelligence operations demanded meticulous attention to detail, emotional discipline under pressure, and the ability to gather actionable information while maintaining operational security that protected both the investigation and my personal safety. The training process began with comprehensive instruction in surveillance detection techniques that would enable me to identify whether my family members had noticed changes in my behavior or suspected that I possessed knowledge about their criminal activities. The ability to recognize surveillance, whether conducted by my family members or by hostile foreign intelligence services, represented a fundamental requirement for operating safely within an environment where multiple parties possess sophisticated capabilities for monitoring and analyzing human behavior. Agent Martinez explained that foreign intelligence operations frequently employed multiple layers of security monitoring to protect valuable assets and ongoing operations from detection by law enforcement agencies. My family's activities were likely protected by surveillance teams, communication intercepts, and behavioral analysis conducted by professionals whose expertise rivaled that of American intelligence services. The assumption that I was operating in a hostile environment required constant vigilance and systematic application of protective measures. The practical instruction in covert communication methods provided me with secure channels for transmitting information to federal investigators without creating electronic signatures or physical evidence that could expose my cooperation with law enforcement agencies. The communication protocols involved encrypted messaging systems, dead drop locations, and signal arrangements that had been developed through decades of operational experience in hostile environments around the world. The most challenging aspect of this preparation involved learning to compartmentalize emotional responses while maintaining authentic interpersonal relationships with individuals whose criminal activities threatened both national security and my personal well-being. The psychological techniques taught by federal agents drew upon research in human behavior under extreme stress, providing methods for managing cognitive dissonance and emotional conflict that could otherwise compromise operational effectiveness. The development of evidence-gathering skills required instruction in photography, audio recording, and document acquisition techniques that could be employed without detection during normal family interactions. The technology provided by federal agencies included miniaturized recording devices, high-resolution cameras disguised as everyday objects, and specialized software for capturing and transmitting digital communications that could provide crucial intelligence about ongoing criminal activities. The first operational assignment involved attending a family dinner at the Belmont Estate, the Montgomery family mansion, where social gatherings frequently served as cover for intelligence activities and criminal coordination. The event was scheduled to include Vivian, Senator Hayes, my mother, and several family friends whose names had appeared in federal intelligence reports as persons of interest in the foreign influence investigation. The preparation for this assignment required detailed planning that addressed every aspect of the evening, from arrival and departure schedules to conversation topics and behavioral objectives. Agent Martinez provided specific intelligence requirements that would guide my information-gathering efforts, including details about recent financial transactions, upcoming travel plans, and communication patterns that could reveal the operational structure of the influence network. The psychological preparation involved rehearsing responses to questions or situations that could test my knowledge or loyalty, while developing natural conversation techniques that would encourage my family members to reveal information about their activities without recognizing that they were being systematically debriefed. The balance between appearing interested and supportive while avoiding suspicious curiosity required careful calibration based on my established personality and previous interaction patterns. The evening began with the familiar ritual of family gathering, the surface appearance of warmth and domestic harmony that had concealed criminal conspiracy for years. My mother greeted me with apparent affection, inquiring about my marriage and professional activities with the kind of maternal concern that would have seemed genuine if I had not possessed knowledge about her systematic manipulation of family relationships for criminal purposes. Vivian appeared confident and animated, discussing wedding planning details and political strategy with the enthusiasm that characterized her public persona. The emerald ring remained prominently displayed on her finger, serving as a constant reminder of the theft that had initiated my discovery of my family's true nature. The casual manner in which she wore stolen property while discussing future plans demonstrated the depth of her psychological detachment from ethical considerations. Senator Hayes participated in the evening's conversations with apparent sincerity, discussing policy initiatives and political developments with the passion that had made him an effective advocate for his constituents. The evidence that he remained unaware of his fiancée's criminal activities created additional complexity for the investigation, since federal agencies needed to gather intelligence about the influence operation without compromising his political career or personal safety. The dinner conversation provided numerous opportunities for gathering intelligence about recent activities and future plans. My mother mentioned upcoming travel to several European cities, describing the trips as cultural tourism and business development that would enhance the family's international connections. The dates and destinations she referenced matched intelligence assessments about scheduled meetings with foreign operatives who were coordinating influence activities targeting American political processes. Vivian's discussion of wedding planning revealed details about guest lists and venue selections that indicated the ceremony would serve as cover for a significant intelligence-gathering operation. The invitation of specific diplomatic personnel, business leaders, and political figures suggested that the wedding reception would provide opportunities for conducting sensitive communications and relationship building that could advance foreign intelligence objectives. The most significant intelligence breakthrough occurred during a private conversation with my mother in the mansion's library, the same room where I had confronted Vivian about the stolen rings several weeks earlier. The familiar setting encouraged confidential discussion, creating conditions where my mother felt comfortable sharing information that she would not have revealed in more public circumstances. During this conversation, my mother expressed concern about federal investigation activities that had apparently increased scrutiny of financial transactions and communication patterns associated with foreign business relationships. Her knowledge of specific investigative techniques and legal procedures indicated that the criminal network possessed sources of information within law enforcement agencies, creating security risks that extended beyond my family's immediate activities. The revelation that hostile intelligence services had penetrated federal law enforcement agencies required immediate communication with Agent Martinez through emergency protocols that had been established for reporting urgent security threats. The information I had gathered about potential compromise of the investigation demanded immediate action to protect both ongoing operations and the safety of federal agents who might be exposed to retaliation from foreign adversaries. The secure communication with Agent Martinez occurred through encrypted messaging systems that protected the transmission from electronic surveillance while enabling real-time coordination of investigative responses. The intelligence about law enforcement penetration triggered immediate security reviews and operational adjustments designed to protect the integrity of the investigation while maintaining my ability to continue gathering crucial evidence. The feedback from federal investigators emphasized that my information gathering had provided significant value for understanding the scope and sophistication of the foreign influence operation. The details about travel plans, communication patterns, and security concerns had enabled more targeted surveillance and analysis that would accelerate the development of criminal cases against all participants in the conspiracy. The recognition that my contributions were making meaningful difference in exposing and disrupting criminal activities provided powerful motivation for continuing the challenging assignment despite the personal and emotional costs of deceiving family members. The transformation from passive victim of family manipulation to active participant in federal law enforcement represented a fundamental evolution in my understanding of personal agency and social responsibility. The development of operational skills and psychological resilience through this assignment was creating capabilities that extended far beyond the immediate requirements of the investigation. The ability to analyze complex situations, manage emotional responses under pressure, and contribute meaningfully to objectives that served broader social interests represented forms of personal empowerment that would remain valuable long after the criminal investigation concluded. The most profound realization during this period was the recognition that my family's systematic manipulation of my emotions and perceptions had actually been developing qualities that now enabled me to operate effectively in challenging circumstances. The emotional discipline that had been necessary for surviving years of psychological manipulation was now serving as the foundation for conducting sophisticated intelligence operations that required sustained performance under extreme stress. The irony that my family's criminal activities had inadvertently prepared me to contribute to their exposure and prosecution provided a form of poetic justice that transcended simple satisfaction with successful investigation. The skills that had been developed through accommodation to their manipulation were now being applied to ensuring that their criminal activities would be fully revealed and appropriately prosecuted. The ongoing development of evidence-gathering capabilities required continuous learning and adaptation as the investigation evolved and new requirements emerged. The dynamic nature of counterintelligence operations demanded flexibility and creative problem-solving that challenged every aspect of my intellectual and emotional capabilities, while providing opportunities for personal growth that would not have been available through conventional career or family experiences. The motivational foundation of this transformation lay in the recognition that authentic empowerment required active engagement with challenging circumstances, rather than passive acceptance of victimization or manipulation. The decision to contribute meaningfully to exposing criminal activities represented a choice to prioritize justice and truth over comfort and family loyalty, creating the foundation for personal development that would continue long after the immediate crisis had been resolved. The weeks ahead would test every aspect of the capabilities I was developing, while providing additional opportunities for gathering the evidence necessary to ensure that my family's criminal activities would be fully exposed and appropriately prosecuted. The journey from confused victim to effective intelligence asset represented more than professional development. It embodied a fundamental transformation in my understanding of personal worth and social responsibility that would shape every aspect of my future decisions and relationships. The breakthrough that would transform my understanding of the conspiracy's true scope occurred during what appeared to be a routine visit to my mother's private study at the Belmont estate. Margaret Montgomery had requested my assistance with organizing family documents related to estate planning, a task that seemed consistent with normal administrative responsibilities but provided unprecedented access to private files that had previously been restricted from family review. The study represented my mother's most personal workspace within the mansion, containing correspondence, financial records, and strategic planning materials that reflected decades of careful relationship building and political networking. The room's atmosphere conveyed both intellectual sophistication and operational security, with multiple locked filing cabinets, encrypted computer systems, and communication equipment that exceeded the requirements of typical family business management. My mother's request for assistance with document organization created the perfect operational opportunity for conducting systematic intelligence gathering while maintaining the appearance of dutiful family cooperation. The assignment from Special Agent Martinez had emphasized the critical importance of accessing financial records that could reveal the complete structure of the foreign influence operation, including funding sources, payment mechanisms, and the identification of additional participants who had not yet been detected through surveillance activities. The document review process began with materials that appeared consistent with legitimate family business activities: investment portfolios, property management records, and correspondence with attorneys and financial advisors who provided professional services to affluent families. However, systematic examination of filing systems and computer directories revealed organizational patterns that suggested more complex activities than routine wealth management and estate planning. The discovery of encrypted digital storage devices hidden within the study's antique furniture marked the beginning of revelations that would exceed every expectation about the sophistication and scope of my family's criminal activities. The storage devices contained terabytes of data that documented systematic intelligence operations spanning multiple years and involving dozens of participants across several countries. The financial records contained within these files revealed that my family's criminal activities were far more extensive than federal investigators had previously understood. The operation included money laundering networks that processed millions of dollars annually, influence campaigns targeting specific legislation and policy initiatives, and coordination with hostile foreign intelligence services that sought to compromise American national security interests through systematic penetration of political and social networks. The most shocking revelation involved the discovery of detailed dossiers containing personal information about hundreds of political figures, diplomats, business leaders, and their family members. These files included financial records, personal communications, behavioral assessments, and strategic plans for cultivating influence relationships that could serve foreign intelligence objectives. The comprehensiveness of this information indicated systematic surveillance and analysis capabilities that rivaled those of professional intelligence services. The documentation revealed that my own marriage to James had been orchestrated through careful manipulation that began years before our initial meeting. The files contained detailed psychological profiles of CIA personnel who possessed access to sensitive national security information, along with strategic plans for arranging social encounters that could lead to romantic relationships with family members who could serve as intelligence assets. The systematic nature of this manipulation extended to every aspect of my relationship with James, including our introduction at a diplomatic reception that appeared coincidental but had actually been arranged through careful coordination with foreign operatives who specialized in human intelligence operations. The location, timing, and circumstances of our meeting had been designed to create optimal conditions for developing the kind of personal relationship that could provide long-term access to classified information and intelligence assessments. The revelation that my marriage was the product of hostile intelligence planning rather than authentic personal connection created psychological trauma that exceeded even the betrayal associated with my family's criminal activities. The relationship that had provided emotional stability and personal fulfillment throughout my adult life was revealed as a strategic operation designed to exploit my emotions and compromise my husband's professional responsibilities. The files contained detailed records of information that had been gathered about James's professional activities through our marriage, including his travel schedules, policy discussions, and assessments of foreign threats that had been transmitted to hostile intelligence services through communication channels that I had unknowingly facilitated. The scope of this compromise suggested that my family's activities had contributed to intelligence failures and security vulnerabilities that potentially affected national security operations worldwide. The documentation also revealed the existence of additional family members whose involvement in the conspiracy had been concealed through compartmentalized operational security that limited each participant's knowledge to specific aspects of the overall operation. The network included distant relatives, family friends, and business associates who had been recruited over multiple years to serve various functions within the influence operation. The most devastating personal revelation involved the discovery that my adoption into the Montgomery family had been arranged to provide cover for intelligence activities, rather than because of genuine desire to provide a loving home for an orphaned child. The files contained records of my biological parents, who had been eliminated by hostile intelligence services after their own work as American intelligence assets was discovered by foreign counterintelligence operations. The systematic deception about my personal history extended to every aspect of my identity and family relationships. The loving childhood that I remembered had been carefully constructed to develop psychological attachments and emotional dependencies that would ensure my usefulness as an unwitting intelligence asset. The educational opportunities, social experiences, and personal development that had shaped my adult capabilities had been designed to prepare me for the role I would eventually serve within the broader intelligence operation. The recognition that my entire life had been shaped by hostile intelligence planning created a fundamental crisis of identity that challenged every assumption about personal autonomy, authentic relationships, and individual worth. The woman who had believed herself to be a valued family member was discovering that she had been a carefully managed operational asset, whose psychological development had been systematically manipulated to serve foreign intelligence objectives. The immediate response to these revelations required applying the emotional discipline and analytical capabilities that had been developed through weeks of counterintelligence training. The magnitude of the betrayal demanded systematic processing rather than emotional reaction, since the information I had discovered represented critical intelligence that could expose and disrupt a sophisticated threat to national security. The secure communication with Special Agent Martinez occurred through emergency protocols that enabled immediate transmission of the most sensitive intelligence while protecting operational security through encrypted channels that could not be compromised by foreign surveillance capabilities. The urgency of the situation required real-time coordination with federal agencies that possessed the resources and authority necessary for responding to threats of this magnitude. The response from federal investigators emphasized that the intelligence I had gathered represented the most significant counterintelligence breakthrough in decades, providing comprehensive documentation of foreign influence operations that had previously been suspected but never fully understood. The evidence would enable coordinated law enforcement actions across multiple jurisdictions while protecting national security interests through systematic dismantling of the entire network. The personal implications of these discoveries required psychological support from federal agencies that possessed experience in helping individuals recover from systematic manipulation and identity trauma. The recognition that every aspect of my personal history had been shaped by hostile intelligence operations created challenges that extended far beyond the immediate requirements of the criminal investigation. The process of reconstructing authentic identity and personal relationships would require extensive counseling and support from professionals who understood the psychological impact of discovering that fundamental assumptions about family, marriage, and personal worth had been systematically manipulated for criminal purposes. The journey toward authentic self-determination would involve abandoning every comfortable assumption about my past while developing new foundations for personal identity and social relationships. The motivational significance of this transformation lay in the recognition that authentic empowerment required confronting the most devastating truths about manipulation and exploitation, while choosing to build genuine relationships and personal worth based on honest self-assessment rather than external validation or family approval. The discovery that my entire life had been shaped by hostile intelligence operations created opportunities for developing authentic autonomy that had never been possible while operating within the constraints of systematic deception. The revelation that I possessed capabilities and strength that had enabled me to survive and function effectively despite years of sophisticated manipulation provided evidence of personal resilience that could serve as the foundation for building genuine empowerment and self-determination. The skills that had been developed through accommodation to family expectations could now be applied to serving authentic personal objectives and social responsibilities. The decision to continue supporting the federal investigation despite the personal trauma associated with these discoveries represented a choice to prioritize truth and justice over comfort and familiar relationships. The commitment to exposing the full scope of the conspiracy demonstrated personal courage that transcended the limitations that had been imposed through years of psychological manipulation and emotional control. The weeks ahead would require applying every aspect of these capabilities while managing the psychological challenges associated with reconstructing authentic identity and personal relationships. The journey toward genuine empowerment had begun with the recognition that comfortable illusions about family and personal history needed to be abandoned in favor of more challenging but ultimately more rewarding commitments to truth, justice, and authentic self-determination. The psychological aftermath of discovering that my entire existence had been orchestrated by hostile intelligence services required a systematic approach to emotional processing that exceeded any previous experience with trauma or personal crisis. The magnitude of the deception demanded professional intervention from specialists who possessed expertise in identity reconstruction following systematic manipulation, a field of psychological practice that had emerged from decades of experience with intelligence personnel who had been compromised through sophisticated coercive techniques. Dr. Catherine Hendricks, the clinical psychologist assigned to my case by federal agencies, possessed extensive experience working with intelligence officers who had survived deep cover operations, prisoners of war who had endured psychological manipulation, and civilians who had been targeted by foreign influence campaigns. Her expertise in identity reconstruction and trauma recovery provided the framework necessary for processing revelations that challenged every fundamental assumption about personal history and authentic relationships. The initial psychological assessment revealed the comprehensive nature of the identity manipulation that had shaped my development from childhood through adulthood. The systematic deception had been implemented through sophisticated techniques that combined emotional manipulation, environmental control, and carefully managed information flow to create the psychological conditions necessary for long-term exploitation without detection. Dr. Hendricks explained that the intelligence operation that had shaped my life represented state-of-the-art human manipulation techniques that had been refined through decades of operational experience by adversarial intelligence services. The level of sophistication involved in creating and maintaining false identity frameworks indicated resource allocation and operational planning that characterized the highest priority intelligence operations conducted by hostile foreign governments. The therapeutic process began with systematic deconstruction of the psychological frameworks that had been imposed through years of carefully managed experiences and relationships. This analysis involved examining every significant relationship, educational experience, and personal milestone to identify the elements that had been authentic versus those that had been engineered to serve operational objectives. The revelation that my marriage to James represented the culmination of years of strategic planning rather than authentic personal connection required particular attention during the therapeutic process. The psychological trauma associated with discovering that the relationship that had provided emotional stability and personal fulfillment was actually a sophisticated intelligence operation created challenges that extended beyond typical marital difficulties or trust issues. Dr. Hendricks emphasized that the manipulation techniques employed in arranging my marriage had been designed to exploit genuine emotional needs and personal vulnerabilities, creating authentic feelings and psychological attachments that served operational objectives while providing real emotional satisfaction to the targets of manipulation. The complexity of this approach meant that the emotions and connections I had experienced were genuine, even though the circumstances that created them had been artificially engineered. The therapeutic work involved developing the ability to distinguish between authentic personal feelings and responses versus those that had been shaped through systematic manipulation. This process required careful analysis of decision-making patterns, emotional reactions, and relationship dynamics to identify areas where my natural psychological development had been influenced by external operational requirements. The most challenging aspect of this psychological reconstruction involved accepting that the loving family relationships I had experienced during childhood and adolescence had been carefully constructed performances designed to create emotional dependencies that would ensure long-term operational effectiveness. The parents who had appeared devoted and nurturing had actually been intelligence operatives, whose expressions of affection served strategic objectives rather than genuine parental emotions. The recognition that my educational experiences, career choices, and social development had been systematically guided to prepare me for eventual exploitation required fundamental reassessment of personal capabilities and achievements that I had previously attributed to individual effort and natural aptitude. The academic success, social skills, and professional competencies that had shaped my adult identity were revealed as products of sophisticated training programs disguised as normal childhood development. Dr. Hendricks provided frameworks for understanding that the capabilities and strengths I had developed were genuine personal assets, regardless of the circumstances that had facilitated their development. The intelligence, analytical skills, emotional discipline, and interpersonal effectiveness that had enabled me to survive years of manipulation without detection represented authentic personal qualities that could serve as the foundation for building genuine autonomy and self-determination. The therapeutic process also addressed the psychological implications of continuing the counterintelligence operation while managing the trauma associated with discovering the true nature of my family relationships. The ability to maintain operational effectiveness while processing devastating personal revelations required sophisticated compartmentalization techniques that balanced emotional honesty with professional responsibilities. The ongoing relationship with James presented particular complexities that required careful navigation through both psychological and operational considerations. The marriage that had been arranged through intelligence manipulation had evolved into a genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared values, creating authentic emotional bonds that existed independently of the circumstances that had initially brought us together. The process of discussing these revelations with James involved extensive preparation with both Dr. Hendricks and Special Agent Martinez to ensure that the conversation would strengthen rather than damage our relationship, while maintaining operational security requirements that protected ongoing investigation activities. The communication required balancing complete honesty about my discoveries with strategic considerations that addressed both personal and professional implications. James responded to these revelations with the analytical objectivity that characterized his approach to complex intelligence challenges, while also demonstrating the personal concern and emotional support that reflected the authentic partnership our marriage had become, despite its artificial origins. His professional experience with intelligence operations provided context for understanding the sophistication of the manipulation we had both experienced, while his personal commitment to our relationship transcended the circumstances that had created it. The recognition that our marriage had evolved beyond its original operational parameters to become a genuine partnership based on shared values and mutual respect provided a foundation for moving forward that honored both the authenticity of our current relationship and the reality of its manipulated origins. The decision to continue building our life together represented a conscious choice to prioritize the authentic connection we had developed over the artificial circumstances that had initially brought us together. The psychological work also addressed the broader implications of discovering that my biological parents had been American intelligence assets who were eliminated by foreign adversaries before my adoption into the Montgomery family. The connection to my authentic family history provided context for understanding my natural capabilities and inclinations, while also explaining why I had been selected as a target for long-term manipulation. The records contained within my mother's files revealed that my biological parents had been conducting deep-cover intelligence operations that required sophisticated analytical skills, emotional discipline under pressure, and the ability to maintain complex deceptions while serving authentic patriotic objectives. The genetic and environmental factors that had shaped my early development had created capabilities that made me particularly valuable for intelligence exploitation. Dr. Hendricks emphasized that the discovery of my authentic family history provided opportunities for understanding personal identity that transcended the manipulation I had experienced through the Montgomery family. The connection to parents who had served their country with courage and integrity offered a foundation for developing genuine self-respect and personal purpose that could guide future decisions and relationships. The therapeutic process included developing practical strategies for managing ongoing family relationships while maintaining operational security and protecting psychological well-being. The ability to interact with Margaret and Vivian Montgomery while knowing the full extent of their manipulation required emotional discipline techniques that balanced operational effectiveness with psychological self-protection. The development of these capabilities involved practicing scenarios that could arise during family interactions, developing appropriate responses to emotional manipulation attempts, and establishing internal psychological boundaries that would prevent the re-establishment of dependency relationships that could compromise either personal well-being or operational objectives. The motivational foundation of this psychological reconstruction process centered on the recognition that authentic empowerment required accepting responsibility for building genuine identity and relationships based on conscious choice, rather than external manipulation or inherited circumstances. The discovery that my entire previous existence had been shaped by hostile intelligence operations created opportunities for developing authentic autonomy that had never been possible while operating within the constraints of systematic deception. The therapeutic work emphasized that the strength and resilience demonstrated through surviving years of sophisticated manipulation, without losing fundamental ethical principles, represented authentic personal qualities that could serve as the foundation for building meaningful life and relationships based on genuine values and conscious decisions, rather than external expectations or operational requirements. The process of moving forward required accepting that recovery from systematic identity manipulation would be an ongoing journey rather than a discrete achievement, but that each step toward authentic self-determination represented progress toward the kind of empowerment that could withstand future challenges and contribute meaningfully to objectives that served both personal fulfillment and broader social responsibilities. The weeks ahead would test every aspect of the psychological resilience and emotional discipline that had been developed through this therapeutic process, while providing additional opportunities for demonstrating that authentic empowerment could emerge from even the most devastating circumstances of manipulation and betrayal, when approached with courage, professional support, and commitment to truth over comfortable illusions. The systematic evaluation of existing relationships required application of intelligence assessment methodologies to personal connections that had previously been viewed through the lens of social courtesy and emotional attachment. The revelation that my family relationships had been orchestrated by hostile intelligence services necessitated comprehensive analysis of every significant connection in my life to determine which individuals could be trusted with sensitive information and which relationships might present security risks or operational vulnerabilities. Special Agent Martinez provided detailed frameworks for conducting personal security assessments that would enable systematic evaluation of relationship authenticity while protecting operational requirements and personal safety. The methodologies developed through decades of counterintelligence experience offered structured approaches for analyzing behavioral patterns, communication histories, and circumstantial evidence that could reveal whether individuals represented genuine allies or potential threats to investigation activities. The assessment process began with comprehensive review of professional relationships that had developed through my career in diplomatic consulting and international business development. These connections possessed particular significance because they provided access to political networks and information sources that could prove valuable for understanding the broader scope of foreign influence operations, while also potentially representing security risks if they had been compromised through intelligence targeting. Dr. Amanda Richardson, my former supervisor at the International Development Institute, emerged as a particularly valuable potential ally through this assessment process. Her extensive experience in identifying and countering foreign influence campaigns targeting international development organizations provided both expertise and credibility that could support ongoing investigation activities, while offering professional guidance for managing the psychological challenges associated with counterintelligence operations. The evaluation of Dr. Richardson's background revealed consistent patterns of ethical leadership and principled opposition to foreign manipulation attempts throughout her career in international development work. Her documented resistance to influence operations conducted by various hostile foreign governments, combined with her current security clearance and established relationships with federal law enforcement agencies, indicated that she could serve as a trusted advisor and potential professional mentor during the investigation period. The initial approach to Dr. Richardson required careful coordination with federal investigators to ensure that her recruitment as a support resource would enhance, rather than compromise, ongoing operational activities. Special Agent Martinez conducted preliminary security assessments and obtained necessary approvals before authorizing contact that would involve sharing classified information about the investigation and my role within it. The conversation with Dr. Richardson took place in a secure conference facility that provided protection from electronic surveillance, while enabling comprehensive discussion of the investigation's requirements and my need for professional guidance from someone with relevant expertise and security credentials. Her response to the briefing demonstrated both professional competence and personal concern that confirmed the accuracy of the preliminary assessment about her suitability as a trusted advisor. Dr. Richardson's analysis of the intelligence operation that had shaped my life provided valuable perspective on the sophisticated techniques employed by foreign adversaries to penetrate American political and social networks. Her experience with similar operations in international development contexts offered insights into countermeasures and protection strategies that could enhance my operational effectiveness while supporting psychological resilience during extended periods of deceptive family interaction. The professional mentoring relationship with Dr. Richardson created opportunities for developing capabilities that extended beyond the immediate requirements of the investigation. Her expertise in strategic communication, cross-cultural analysis, and organizational behavior provided frameworks for understanding complex social dynamics that would prove valuable for building authentic relationships and professional competencies after the investigation concluded. The assessment of academic and educational relationships revealed additional connections that possessed potential value for providing intellectual support and emotional stability during the challenging period ahead. Professor Michael Chen from Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service represented a particularly valuable resource through his expertise in international security studies and his established relationships with intelligence community professionals. Professor Chen's academic research focused specifically on foreign influence operations targeting American democratic institutions, providing intellectual frameworks that could enhance my understanding of the broader strategic context within which my family's criminal activities had been conducted. His published work on psychological manipulation techniques and identity compromise offered theoretical foundations that complemented the practical training provided by federal investigators. The evaluation process also addressed personal friendships that had developed through social activities and community involvement, relationships that possessed emotional significance but required careful analysis to determine their authenticity and security implications. The systematic manipulation that had shaped my family relationships created uncertainty about whether other connections in my life had been similarly compromised through intelligence targeting. Jennifer Walsh, a colleague from the Washington International Arts Foundation, where I had volunteered for several years, emerged as a particularly important potential ally through this assessment process. Her background in art therapy and trauma counseling, combined with her demonstrated integrity and discretion in managing sensitive information, indicated that she could provide emotional support that complemented the professional psychological services arranged through federal agencies. The relationship with Jennifer represented one of the few connections in my life that appeared to have developed organically through shared interests and compatible personalities, rather than through strategic manipulation or operational requirements. The genuine friendship that had emerged through collaborative work on international cultural programs provided a foundation of authentic human connection that could serve as an anchor during the psychological challenges of extended counterintelligence operations. The careful approach to expanding Jennifer's role in my support network required coordination with both Dr. Hendricks and Special Agent Martinez to ensure that emotional support activities would not compromise operational security, while providing the personal connection necessary for maintaining psychological stability. The balance between operational requirements and authentic human relationships represented one of the most complex challenges of conducting extended counterintelligence operations. The assessment of financial and legal advisors revealed additional relationships that required evaluation for both trustworthiness and potential security implications. The discovery that my family's criminal activities involved sophisticated money laundering operations created concerns about whether professional service providers might have been compromised through knowledge of illegal activities or through direct participation in financial crimes. Robert Sterling, the attorney who had provided estate planning and business legal services for my personal affairs, underwent comprehensive background investigation through federal agencies before being cleared for continued professional relationship. His established reputation for ethical practice and his lack of connection to my family's business activities indicated that he could continue providing legal guidance without presenting security risks to ongoing investigation activities. The relationship with Sterling proved particularly valuable for understanding the legal implications of my cooperation with federal investigators and for developing strategies that would protect my interests during criminal prosecution proceedings. His expertise in federal criminal law and intelligence-related legal matters provided guidance for navigating complex legal situations while maintaining both operational effectiveness and personal protection. The evaluation process also addressed healthcare relationships that possessed access to personal information that could potentially be exploited by hostile intelligence services seeking to identify vulnerabilities or pressure points that could be used for operational manipulation. The systematic assessment of medical professionals, mental health providers, and therapeutic support services required careful analysis of both professional qualifications and security awareness. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the physician who had provided primary healthcare services for several years, underwent security assessment that confirmed her suitability for continued medical relationship during the investigation period. Her established practice protocols for protecting patient confidentiality, combined with her willingness to implement additional security measures recommended by federal agencies, ensured that healthcare services could continue without creating operational vulnerabilities. The development of communication protocols with support network members required extensive coordination with federal investigators to establish information sharing procedures that would protect operational security while enabling the emotional and professional support necessary for sustained counterintelligence activities. The balance between transparency with trusted allies and operational compartmentalization represented a fundamental challenge that required ongoing management throughout the investigation period. The implementation of secure communication systems enabled regular contact with support network members while protecting sensitive information about investigation activities and personal safety considerations. The technology provided by federal agencies included encrypted messaging capabilities and secure voice communication systems that prevented foreign intelligence services from monitoring personal relationships that could be targeted for exploitation or manipulation. The motivational significance of building an authentic support network extended beyond the immediate operational requirements of the investigation. The process of identifying and developing genuine relationships based on shared values and mutual respect represented a fundamental step toward building the kind of authentic life that had been prevented through years of systematic manipulation and false relationships. The recognition that trustworthy individuals were willing to provide support and guidance despite the personal risks and professional challenges associated with counterintelligence operations demonstrated that authentic human connections could withstand even the most challenging circumstances when based on genuine respect and shared commitment to justice and truth. The ongoing development of these support relationships created foundations for personal growth and professional development that would continue long after the investigation concluded. The skills and perspectives gained through collaboration with individuals who possessed expertise in psychology, international security, legal affairs, and personal development represented investments in capabilities that would serve authentic personal objectives rather than operational requirements imposed by others. The weeks ahead would test every aspect of these support relationships while providing additional opportunities for demonstrating that authentic empowerment could be built through conscious choice of allies and advisors who shared commitment to truth, justice, and genuine human development, rather than manipulation or exploitation for external objectives. The development of comprehensive operational strategies required systematic coordination between federal investigators, psychological support professionals, and the newly established support network that would enable sustained counterintelligence activities while protecting both investigation objectives and personal safety. The complexity of maintaining deceptive family relationships while gathering actionable intelligence demanded sophisticated planning that addressed every aspect of operational security, evidence collection, and risk management through multiple contingency scenarios. Special Agent Martinez convened a series of strategic planning sessions that brought together expertise from various federal agencies, academic institutions, and private sector specialists who possessed relevant experience in counterintelligence operations, psychological manipulation, and international security threats. The collaborative approach reflected recognition that the sophistication of the foreign influence operation required equally sophisticated responses that leveraged diverse professional capabilities and institutional resources. The initial strategic assessment identified 3 primary operational objectives that would guide all planning and implementation activities throughout the investigation period. The first objective involved gathering comprehensive evidence about the financial mechanisms, communication networks, and operational procedures that supported the foreign influence operation centered around my family's activities. The second objective focused on identifying additional participants in the conspiracy who had not been detected through previous surveillance and investigation efforts. The third objective emphasized protecting national security interests, while ensuring that criminal prosecution activities would successfully dismantle the entire network without creating opportunities for operational continuation under different leadership or organizational structures. Dr. Amanda Richardson contributed strategic analysis that placed my family's activities within the broader context of foreign influence campaigns targeting American democratic institutions. Her research indicated that similar operations were likely being conducted simultaneously in multiple cities, suggesting that successful disruption of the Montgomery family network could provide intelligence that would enable identification and neutralization of related activities across the country. The strategic planning process incorporated extensive risk assessment that addressed both operational hazards and personal safety considerations. The potential for violent retaliation from foreign intelligence services created security requirements that extended beyond normal law enforcement protection protocols, necessitating coordination with agencies that specialized in protecting assets who had been exposed to hostile foreign government threats. Professor Michael Chen provided academic frameworks for understanding the psychological and social dynamics that would shape family interactions during extended periods of deceptive engagement. His expertise in cross-cultural communication and behavioral analysis offered insights into strategies for maintaining authentic emotional connections with James, while simultaneously conducting systematic deception with family members who possessed sophisticated capabilities for detecting behavioral changes or emotional inconsistencies. The development of evidence collection strategies required balancing aggressive intelligence gathering with operational security that would prevent premature exposure of investigation activities. The planning process identified specific information requirements that would enable federal prosecutors to build comprehensive criminal cases while providing intelligence assessments that could guide broader national security responses to foreign influence threats. The strategic approach to family engagement involved carefully scripted scenarios that would create opportunities for gathering specific types of evidence, while maintaining the appearance of normal family relationships and continued loyalty to Montgomery family interests. The psychological preparation for these interactions required extensive rehearsal and contingency planning to ensure that emotional responses and behavioral patterns would remain consistent with established personality characteristics. Jennifer Walsh contributed insights from art therapy and trauma counseling that addressed the psychological sustainability of conducting extended deceptive operations while managing the emotional impact of systematic betrayal by family members. Her expertise in emotional regulation and stress management provided practical techniques for maintaining psychological stability during high-stress interactions that required sustained performance of false emotional states. The operational timeline was structured around natural family events and social obligations that would provide legitimate opportunities for gathering intelligence without creating suspicious departures from normal interaction patterns. The approaching wedding planning activities for Vivian's marriage to Senator Hayes created particular opportunities for accessing information about guest lists, venue arrangements, and communication protocols that could reveal operational procedures and participant networks. The strategic coordination with Senator Hayes' security detail required delicate negotiation to ensure that protection activities would not interfere with evidence gathering, while simultaneously ensuring that the senator would not be exposed to additional security risks through his unwitting involvement in foreign influence operations. The bipartisan support for protecting elected officials from foreign manipulation enabled cooperation that transcended normal partisan considerations. Robert Sterling provided legal analysis that addressed the complex jurisdictional and procedural issues associated with conducting counterintelligence operations that involved both criminal prosecution and national security considerations. His expertise in federal criminal law enabled development of evidence collection procedures that would satisfy both prosecutorial requirements and intelligence community standards for protecting classified information and operational methods. The financial investigation strategies required coordination with Treasury Department specialists who possessed expertise in tracking international money laundering operations and identifying hidden assets that could be subject to criminal forfeiture proceedings. The complexity of the financial networks associated with the foreign influence operation demanded sophisticated analytical capabilities that exceeded normal law enforcement resources. The communication security protocols established for the investigation required implementation of multiple redundant systems that would protect operational information while enabling real-time coordination between various participants in the strategic planning process. The technology solutions provided by federal agencies included encrypted communication systems, secure data storage capabilities, and surveillance detection equipment that would enable continuous assessment of operational security throughout the investigation period. Dr. Hendricks contributed psychological planning that addressed the long-term mental health implications of conducting extended counterintelligence operations while managing identity reconstruction and relationship rebuilding activities. Her expertise in trauma recovery enabled development of therapeutic support schedules that would maintain psychological resilience while accommodating the operational demands of the investigation. The strategic planning also addressed post-investigation considerations that would shape decisions about evidence collection priorities and operational procedures. The recognition that successful prosecution of the conspiracy would likely require witness testimony and public disclosure of family criminal activities necessitated preparation for media attention and social consequences that would extend beyond the formal conclusion of legal proceedings. The development of contingency plans addressed various scenarios that could compromise operational security or create immediate threats to personal safety. The possibility that family members might discover the investigation through counterintelligence activities of their own required preparation for emergency extraction procedures and alternative communication methods that would enable continued cooperation with federal authorities under hostile conditions. The international coordination requirements reflected the global scope of the foreign influence operation and the need for cooperation with allied intelligence services that possessed relevant information about related activities in other countries. The strategic planning incorporated diplomatic considerations that would enable information sharing while protecting American national security interests and maintaining alliance relationships that extended beyond the immediate investigation. The training program developed for the operational phase combined elements of intelligence tradecraft, psychological preparation, and legal education that would enable effective performance of counterintelligence activities while maintaining awareness of rights and responsibilities under federal law. The comprehensive approach reflected recognition that successful operations required more than technical skills, demanding ethical grounding and moral clarity that could withstand the psychological pressures of extended deceptive engagement. The motivational foundation of this strategic planning process emphasized that authentic empowerment required systematic preparation and professional support, rather than relying solely on individual determination or emotional resilience. The collaborative approach demonstrated that meaningful contribution to justice and national security objectives could be achieved through careful coordination with individuals and institutions that shared commitment to democratic values and ethical conduct. The recognition that strategic planning enabled more effective action than reactive responses provided frameworks for approaching other life challenges with systematic analysis and preparation, rather than hoping that determination alone would prove sufficient for achieving important objectives. The skills developed through this process would continue to serve personal and professional development long after the immediate investigation requirements had been fulfilled. The weeks ahead would test every aspect of these strategic preparations, while providing opportunities for demonstrating that carefully planned action could achieve objectives that might seem impossible when approached without systematic preparation and professional support. The foundation for authentic empowerment had been established through recognition that meaningful change required more than individual effort, demanding collaboration with others who possessed relevant expertise and shared commitment to justice and truth. The implementation of strategic plans commenced with carefully orchestrated engagement in routine family activities that would provide natural opportunities for evidence collection while testing the psychological preparation and operational training that had been developed through weeks of intensive preparation. The initial operational phase required demonstrating that theoretical planning could translate into effective action under the psychological pressure of maintaining deceptive relationships with individuals who possessed sophisticated capabilities for detecting behavioral inconsistencies or emotional deception. The first operational assignment involved participating in wedding planning activities for Vivian's upcoming marriage to Senator Hayes, an event that federal investigators had identified as a critical intelligence-gathering opportunity due to the extensive guest list that included diplomatic personnel, foreign business representatives, and political figures whose presence would provide insights into the broader network of relationships that supported the foreign influence operation. The preparation for this assignment required extensive coordination with federal agencies to establish evidence collection priorities that would guide interaction strategies while maintaining operational security that protected both investigation activities and personal safety. The wedding planning process would create unprecedented access to information about communication protocols, financial arrangements, and operational procedures that had previously been concealed through compartmentalized security measures. Margaret Montgomery had requested my assistance with coordinating invitations and venue logistics, responsibilities that appeared consistent with normal family obligations, but would provide systematic access to guest information, vendor relationships, and communication patterns that could reveal the operational structure of the foreign influence network. The assignment represented a perfect convergence of family expectations and intelligence requirements that enabled productive evidence gathering while maintaining authentic relationship dynamics. The initial meeting with the wedding planning coordinator took place at an exclusive venue in downtown Washington that specialized in high-profile political and diplomatic events. The facility possessed the kind of security capabilities and discretion protocols that would be required for an event that included foreign diplomatic personnel and intelligence operatives who were conducting business under the cover of social celebration. Catherine Bordeaux, the wedding planning coordinator, demonstrated the professional competence and security awareness that characterized service providers who regularly worked with politically sensitive events. Her expertise in managing complex logistics while maintaining confidentiality protocols indicated that she possessed experience with events that served multiple purposes beyond traditional wedding celebrations. The discussion of guest accommodations revealed information about foreign attendees who would require specialized security arrangements and diplomatic protocol considerations that extended beyond normal wedding planning requirements. The presence of individuals from multiple countries that maintained hostile intelligence relationships with the United States indicated that the wedding would serve as cover for significant intelligence activities that could affect national security interests. The venue selection process provided opportunities for understanding the security and communication capabilities that would be available during the wedding event. The facility possessed sophisticated electronic surveillance systems, encrypted communication networks, and physical security arrangements that could either support or compromise federal investigation activities depending on how they were configured and monitored during the event. The coordination with florists, catering services, and entertainment providers revealed vendor relationships that extended beyond normal commercial arrangements, suggesting that multiple service providers had been selected based on their willingness to accommodate special requirements that were not typically associated with wedding celebrations. The pattern of vendor selection indicated systematic planning for activities that would require operational security and communication capabilities. The most significant intelligence breakthrough occurred during a private conversation with Vivian about guest list priorities and seating arrangements. Her discussion of specific foreign diplomatic personnel revealed detailed knowledge about their intelligence affiliations and operational responsibilities that exceeded what would normally be available to private citizens through public information sources. The systematic nature of Vivian's knowledge about foreign intelligence personnel indicated that she had received extensive briefing about their backgrounds, operational capabilities, and strategic objectives that would guide her interaction with them during the wedding celebration. The sophistication of this preparation confirmed federal assessments about the wedding serving as cover for intelligence operations, rather than simply providing opportunities for informal relationship building. The evidence collection during these wedding planning activities required application of covert recording techniques that had been developed through federal training programs, while maintaining natural conversation patterns that would not alert Vivian to the systematic documentation of her statements about foreign intelligence relationships and operational procedures. The audio recordings obtained through these conversations provided federal investigators with detailed information about planned intelligence activities, participant identities, and communication protocols that had not been available through previous surveillance efforts. The quality and specificity of this intelligence indicated that the operational training and psychological preparation had successfully enabled effective evidence gathering under challenging circumstances. The feedback from Special Agent Martinez emphasized that the intelligence gathered through wedding planning activities had provided crucial insights that would enable more targeted surveillance and analysis during the actual wedding event. The information about foreign intelligence personnel and their operational objectives would guide security arrangements and evidence collection strategies that could expose the complete scope of the influence operation. The psychological impact of successfully completing this initial assignment created confidence that the strategic planning and preparation process had been effective in developing capabilities that could withstand the emotional and operational challenges of extended counterintelligence activities. The recognition that theoretical training could translate into practical effectiveness under real-world conditions provided motivation for continuing the investigation despite its personal and emotional costs. The second operational assignment involved attending a diplomatic reception hosted by the Russian Cultural Center, an event that Margaret Montgomery had described as important for maintaining international relationships that supported family business interests. The federal investigation had identified this event as a regular meeting opportunity for foreign intelligence operatives and their American assets, making it a priority target for intelligence gathering and surveillance activities. The preparation for the diplomatic reception required coordination with multiple federal agencies to establish surveillance support and communication protocols that would enable real-time intelligence collection while protecting operational security through comprehensive situational awareness and emergency response capabilities. The reception venue provided sophisticated security and communication capabilities that reflected the importance of the event for foreign intelligence activities. The facility possessed electronic surveillance systems, encrypted communication networks, and physical security arrangements that indicated professional operational planning rather than routine cultural programming. The guest list for the reception included individuals from multiple countries who maintained intelligence relationships that were hostile to American national security interests. The systematic presence of these personnel at a single location provided unprecedented opportunities for observing interaction patterns, communication protocols, and relationship dynamics that could reveal operational procedures and strategic objectives. The conversation opportunities during the reception enabled systematic intelligence gathering about recent activities, future plans, and operational concerns that were being discussed among foreign intelligence personnel who believed they were operating in a secure environment among trusted colleagues and assets. The audio and photographic evidence collected during the reception provided federal investigators with comprehensive documentation of intelligence activities that had previously been suspected but never directly observed. The quality and scope of this evidence would enable development of criminal cases against multiple participants while providing strategic intelligence that could guide broader national security responses. The successful completion of the diplomatic reception assignment demonstrated that operational capabilities had been developed to the level where systematic intelligence gathering could be conducted in challenging environments while maintaining personal safety and operational security. The confidence gained through this success provided motivation for tackling more complex assignments that would require even greater skill and psychological resilience. The third operational assignment involved coordinating financial arrangements for wedding expenses, responsibilities that would provide access to bank records, payment procedures, and vendor relationships that could reveal money laundering activities, and international financial networks that supported the foreign influence operation. The financial coordination activities required working directly with Margaret Montgomery to review payment schedules, vendor contracts, and banking procedures that were being used to manage wedding expenses that exceeded normal celebration costs by significant margins. The systematic overbudgeting indicated that wedding expenses were being used as cover for financial transactions that served operational rather than celebratory purposes. The banking records revealed complex international wire transfers, currency exchanges, and account relationships that indicated sophisticated money laundering activities that were being coordinated with wedding planning to provide legitimate explanations for large financial transactions that would otherwise attract regulatory attention from federal financial oversight agencies. The evidence collected through financial coordination activities provided federal investigators with comprehensive documentation of money laundering procedures that could support criminal prosecution while revealing international financial networks that extended far beyond my family's immediate activities. The scope and sophistication of these financial arrangements confirmed assessments about the wedding serving multiple operational purposes that threatened national security interests. The motivational significance of these initial operational successes extended beyond immediate investigation requirements to demonstrate that systematic preparation and professional support could enable achievement of objectives that had seemed impossible when first contemplated. The progression from confused family member to effective intelligence operative represented transformation that could serve as a foundation for approaching future challenges with confidence in personal capabilities and professional resources. The recognition that careful planning and sustained effort could produce meaningful results in complex and dangerous situations provided frameworks for understanding that authentic empowerment required more than emotional resilience or individual determination, demanding systematic development of capabilities through collaboration with others who possessed relevant expertise and shared commitment to important objectives. The weeks ahead would present increasingly challenging assignments that would test every aspect of the operational capabilities and psychological resilience that had been developed through this initial phase of active engagement, while providing additional opportunities for contributing meaningfully to exposing and dismantling threats to national security and democratic institutions. The first indication that hostile forces had become aware of investigation activities emerged through subtle changes in family interaction patterns that required immediate analysis and strategic response to protect both operational security and personal safety. The sophisticated surveillance detection training provided by federal agencies enabled recognition of behavioral modifications that indicated increased suspicion and potential counterintelligence activities being conducted by foreign operatives who possessed advanced capabilities for identifying and neutralizing threats to their operational security. Margaret Montgomery's communication patterns underwent systematic alteration during the week following the diplomatic reception assignment, shifting from her normal direct and controlling style to more cautious and indirect approaches that suggested awareness of potential surveillance or information compromise. The modification in her behavioral baseline indicated that foreign intelligence handlers had provided guidance about enhanced operational security measures that would protect ongoing activities from law enforcement detection. The change manifested through several observable patterns that collectively suggested coordinated counterintelligence response rather than random behavioral variation. Margaret began using coded language during telephone conversations, implemented new travel patterns that included surveillance detection routes, and modified her social engagement calendar to avoid situations that might provide opportunities for unauthorized observation or information gathering. The most concerning development involved the appearance of professional surveillance teams that began monitoring both my residence and workplace, indicating that foreign intelligence services had identified me as a potential security threat and were conducting assessment activities to determine the scope of any compromise to their operational network. The surveillance teams demonstrated capabilities that exceeded typical criminal organization resources, employing sophisticated equipment and operational procedures that characterize state-sponsored intelligence activities. Special Agent Martinez coordinated immediate security enhancements that included counter-surveillance support, communication protocol modifications, and expanded protective measures that would enable continued investigation activities while protecting against potential retaliation or operational compromise. The federal response demonstrated institutional capabilities for protecting assets who faced threats from hostile foreign intelligence services. The psychological preparation for operating under hostile surveillance required additional training that addressed the mental discipline necessary for maintaining normal behavioral patterns, while being systematically observed by professionals whose expertise included behavioral analysis and psychological assessment. The challenge of appearing authentic while being monitored by experts demanded emotional control techniques that exceeded previous training requirements. Dr. Hendricks provided specialized counseling that addressed the psychological impact of constant surveillance and the stress associated with knowing that every action and interaction was being analyzed for signs of deception or operational activity. The therapeutic support included techniques for managing anxiety and maintaining psychological resilience under conditions of sustained threat and uncertainty. The emergence of surveillance activities also created operational opportunities for gathering intelligence about foreign counterintelligence capabilities and procedures that could provide valuable insights for broader national security assessments. The careful observation of surveillance team methods, equipment, and coordination patterns enabled federal agencies to develop more effective countermeasures for protecting other operations and personnel who faced similar threats. The second manifestation of hostile resistance occurred through attempted manipulation of my professional relationships and social connections, indicating that foreign intelligence services were conducting systematic efforts to isolate me from potential sources of support while creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited for operational leverage. The sophistication of these influence attempts demonstrated detailed knowledge about my personal relationships and psychological vulnerabilities. Dr. Amanda Richardson reported receiving inquiries about my professional competence and psychological stability from individuals who claimed to represent potential employers or academic institutions. The systematic nature of these contacts indicated coordinated efforts to damage my professional reputation while gathering information about my current activities and future plans that could guide hostile operational planning. The attempted manipulation of professional relationships required immediate coordination with federal agencies to protect both my career prospects and the security of individuals who had provided support during the investigation process. The response included providing accurate information to legitimate professional contacts while identifying and documenting attempts at manipulation that could serve as evidence of foreign intelligence activities. Jennifer Walsh experienced similar pressure through social manipulation attempts that targeted her personal relationships and professional activities, indicating that foreign intelligence services had identified the support network that had been developed to sustain investigation activities. The systematic targeting of support relationships demonstrated sophisticated understanding of American social dynamics and psychological vulnerabilities. The protection of support network members required expansion of security measures to include individuals who had not previously been exposed to foreign intelligence threats, creating additional complexity for federal agencies, while demonstrating the commitment to protecting civilians who had chosen to support national security objectives despite personal risks. The third resistance manifestation involved direct confrontation through family pressure, designed to create emotional and psychological stress that would compromise investigation effectiveness, while potentially forcing premature termination of operational activities. The psychological manipulation techniques employed demonstrated sophisticated understanding of family dynamics and emotional vulnerabilities that had been developed through years of systematic observation and analysis. Vivian initiated a series of family meetings that ostensibly addressed wedding planning concerns, but actually served to create opportunities for observing my behavioral patterns while applying psychological pressure designed to test my continued loyalty to family interests. The meetings included subtle interrogation techniques that probed for signs of deception or external influence while maintaining the surface appearance of normal family interaction. The psychological preparation for these confrontational encounters required extensive rehearsal and contingency planning to ensure that responses would remain consistent with established personality patterns while protecting sensitive information about investigation activities. The challenge of maintaining authentic emotional responses during systematic manipulation demanded every aspect of the emotional discipline and performance capabilities that had been developed through months of training. Margaret Montgomery escalated the psychological pressure through direct questioning about my recent activities, professional relationships, and personal concerns that indicated detailed knowledge about federal investigation procedures and potential indicators of cooperation with law enforcement agencies. Her questioning demonstrated training and interrogation techniques that exceeded normal civilian capabilities, confirming assessments about foreign intelligence involvement in her criminal activities. The systematic nature of the family pressure campaign indicated coordination with foreign intelligence handlers who possessed extensive experience in psychological manipulation and coercive techniques designed to compromise operational security while maintaining plausible deniability about hostile intelligence activities. The sophistication of the approach required equally sophisticated countermeasures to protect both investigation objectives and personal safety. The fourth resistance development involved attempted recruitment of James through professional channels that offered career advancement opportunities contingent upon changes in his current assignment and reduced involvement in counterintelligence activities that threatened foreign interests. The recruitment attempts demonstrated detailed knowledge about CIA organizational structure and personnel management procedures that indicated significant penetration of American intelligence agencies. The attempted manipulation of James created particularly serious national security implications, because his position provided access to classified information that could compromise ongoing operations and expose intelligence personnel to hostile foreign governments. The systematic nature of the recruitment efforts indicated that foreign intelligence services viewed his compromise as a high-priority objective that justified significant resource allocation and operational risk. The response to attempted recruitment required coordination with CIA security personnel and counterintelligence specialists who possessed expertise in protecting senior officials from foreign manipulation attempts. The protective measures included enhanced communication security, modified travel procedures, and expanded background investigations of professional contacts who might serve as recruitment intermediaries. The recognition that foreign intelligence services were willing to expose significant operational capabilities to prevent or compromise the investigation provided powerful validation of its importance, while creating additional motivation for ensuring successful completion despite escalating threats and resistance activities. The level of resources being devoted to opposing the investigation confirmed federal assessments about the significance of the criminal network and its potential impact on national security interests. The psychological impact of sustained resistance activities required enhanced therapeutic support to maintain emotional resilience and operational effectiveness under conditions of escalating pressure and threat. Dr. Hendricks provided additional counseling sessions that addressed stress management techniques, while reinforcing the importance of the investigation for protecting democratic institutions and national security interests. The motivational foundation for persevering through resistance activities centered on recognition that opposition from hostile forces provided confirmation that investigation activities were effectively threatening criminal operations and foreign intelligence objectives. The systematic nature of the resistance demonstrated that previous assessments about the significance of my family's criminal activities had been accurate, while confirming that continued investigation could produce results that would significantly advance national security interests. The emergence of coordinated resistance also provided evidence that individual determination and institutional support could withstand sophisticated efforts by hostile foreign governments to compromise American democratic processes and intelligence capabilities. The successful continuation of investigation activities despite escalating pressure demonstrated that authentic empowerment could prevail against systematic manipulation and coercion when supported by professional expertise and institutional resources. The weeks ahead would require applying every aspect of the psychological resilience and operational capabilities that had been developed, while demonstrating that sustained commitment to truth and justice could overcome even the most sophisticated resistance from foreign adversaries, who possessed extensive resources and operational experience in compromising American institutions and personnel. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.